Okay, today we're going to talk about probability. This is my daughter Piper. She promises to be quiet.
But I will leave.
Okay. So, probability, right, is what we're going to talk about today. So, write that down. Remember, pause it whenever I go too fast. So, the probability of an event happening. In our examples, we'll talk about certain events, but the probability of an event happening is the number. I'm going to use the number sign. You may think it's a hashtag, but it's number. Number of favorable, so that's what we want to happen, outcomes over or divided by the number of total outcomes. Okay, and we'll do lots of examples, but you're always going to do that. It's the number of favorable over the number of total. Okay, so if we were to roll a dice or a die, what is the probability of rolling a 4 on a 6-sided cube is sometimes how it's said instead of a dice or a die. So a 6-sided cube, there's numbers 1 through 6 on the cube. So remember, if I get this and let me see if I can do this real quick. If I get, well, it'll spin it, but I was trying to get, this is what I was looking for. So you see how there's 1 through 6 on the dice, okay? So if I were to spin it, what is the probability, this was what this means, P of 4, the probability of spinning or rolling a 4. Well, how many 4s are there on a cube? Do you know how many 4s on a cube? Okay, there's one. There's 1 4 on a cube. So, on a dice. So there's 1, and how many total sides are there? Okay, there's 6. There's 6 different numbers because it's 1 through 6. So the probability of rolling a 4 is 1 out of 6. Okay, it's more than 0, but it's less than 1 whole. Okay, it's less likely to happen. Okay, the probability of an even number, well, we have 2, 4, and 6, so that's 3 out of 6. So, and if we divide it by 3, that's going to be 1/2. So the probability is 1 out of 2. Or it's just as likely to happen as it is to not happen. Okay, probability of just rolling a 4 is less likely. Okay. Probability of rolling a 2, 3, 4, or 6. Okay, well there's 4 of those, so 4 out of 6, and you always simplify, so it would be 2 out of 3. So what that says is, in theory, if you roll the dice 3 times, you should get one of these numbers at least twice. Okay, so 2 out of 3, or it's more likely, okay, more likely to happen. A 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6, well, that's all of them. That's all the numbers on a dice. So you're for sure, divide by 6, it's 1 over 1 or 1. Okay, so that means it's certain that it's going to happen. It's certain that it's going to happen, and we'll talk about those words here in a minute because there's no other numbers. Now, what's the probability of rolling a 0? Is there a 0 on a dice? No, there's not. So it would be 0 out of 6, which is 0, which means it's impossible. It's impossible to roll a 0 on a dice that doesn't have any zeros on it. It's impossible. Okay, now what about the probability of not rolling a 4? So the probability of not rolling the 4 is opposite of the probability of rolling a 4. So if the probability of rolling a 4, remember, was 1/6, the probability of then rolling a 1, 2, 3, 5, or 6 would be 5 out of 6, which makes sense because that would equal 1 whole. So the probability of not rolling a 4 is pretty likely, okay? Okay, this is a very important chart for you all. And I'm going to make this, so this is kind of like a number line. Probability is only between 0 and 1. It's only between 0 and 1. All right, so if you get a 0 or a 0 out of something, 0 out of 10 or 0 out of 20 or 0 out of 6, it is impossible to roll that or flip. I mean, what's the probability of flipping a taco when you flip a coin? You can only get heads or tails. You can't get a taco, so it'd be impossible. Now, unlikely, okay, would be like 1/4. Okay, 1/4. So if you simplified it and you got 1/4, then it's still unlikely to happen. If you get 1/2, then it's just as likely to happen as not to happen. If you get 3/4, it's likely. And then if you get something over itself, so 4/4 or 10/10, then it's certain. Okay? What's the probability of flipping a coin and getting a heads or tails? It's certain. You're going to get either a heads or tails. There's no other option unless you're really good and can get it on its side. Okay, so anything between the 1/2 and the 1 is going to be likely. Anything between the 0 and the 1/2 is unlikely. Okay, and then there's impossible and there's certain. All right, and then there's just as, if it's right in the middle, it's just as likely as likely. You could do this with percents as well. 0%, 25%, 50%, 75%, 100%. Okay, so let's do a few more examples. So if we have this spinner, you do not have to draw this spinner if you do not want. If you want to, pause it and draw it. But we're going to find the probability. If we spun this spinner, what's the probability of getting a red? So how many red slices are there?
5.
5. And how many total slices are there?
9.
Let's read it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12.
Oh.
How many total? Not minus the 5. So 5 reds, and then the total number, you're still going to include the reds. You're still going to include the reds. So 5 out of 12 is the probability of spinning a red. Okay, and that does not simplify. So 5 out of 12 is less than 1/2. So it would be unlikely, because 1/2 would be 6 out of 12. Okay, so it's unlikely because it's less than 1/2. The probability of white, do you see any white on here?
No.
No. So that's going to be 0 out of 12, which is impossible. Okay. Blue or green. So there's 1, 2, 3 blues,
And 3 green.
4, 5, 6. So there's 6 total because it says blue or green. If it said and, it would be impossible as well. So 6 out of 12, which we divide by 6 and is 1/2. So it's just as likely as unlikely. Okay? It's right down the middle. So what about not yellow? So not yellow means all the others that aren't yellow. Well, there's only one yellow. So there's only 1 out of 12 that is yellow. So how many out of 12 are not yellow? 11 out of 12 are not yellow. This cannot simplify, but it's going to be likely because it's really close to 12 out of 12, which is certain. Okay, so